Now, your favourite AI tool is generally a terrible storyteller. Now, this isn't an anti-AI rant. On the contrary, I think AI is one of the greatest things to have happened since the invention of the internet. That changed our lives, and this is obviously changing our lives even more. I'm old enough to remember when people thought that the internet was the end of the world, or alternatively, it was just a fad and it wasn't going to last. That is obviously not the case with AI. It ain't going anywhere. But I just wanted to set out 10 ways in which it can't tell a story properly, and consequently 10 reasons why you need to leave AI to do what it does best, and you to do what you do best. The first thing, and probably the most important thing, is it can't do emotional. It can't do empathy, because empathy is the thing that glues humans together, whatever people say these days. And generally, the content that it comes out with is flat, it's a bit generic. Even if you tweak the prompts a little bit, quite a lot, and generally people don't. And often it's downright odd. In fact, even more importantly, it doesn't have your personal experience. So it cannot tell your little stories. And I've got great experience of this. I mean, I wrote a book which is 30% my story. I've uploaded it into Claude, and it still misses most of the things in there, but obviously all the things that aren't in there, all the thing that happened to me yesterday, it doesn't know and can't do, and it can't draw on those experiences. The experiences I had when I was, 20 years ago, when I was a teenager, that are locked in my head and nobody else's. Well, it can't do it. So, personal experience and cultural background as well. It doesn't know the things that I experienced when I went to France, the emotions that I experienced, a certain amount of displacement until I got used to where I was. It can't replicate those things, and it can't replicate those things for you. And even if you feed it those stories, I'll go back to point one, it tends to come out in a bland, generic way. Subtlety and nuance aren't its strong point either. It's generally AI programs, they're imitators. So you can ask it to write in the style of Shakespeare, because Shakespeare's all over the place. You can ask it to write in the style of public figures. They're all over the place. I asked Perplexity the other day to just give me some dad jokes. Not exactly the most subtle of things. And they were fine, He says, looking down at his notes, what do you call a fake spaghetti? An impasta, But stuff more subtle, like metaphors, sarcasm, the inside jokes you have, can't do it. It struggles with what I would call radical originality, because a lot of, all the content that it gives is pulled from the big information soup out there, and it is a great leveler, if you like. So it takes the average, it takes the middle, it takes the most bland, middle of the road, trying to please everybody type stuff. So, like I say, radical originality is not its strong point. It can't understand what I call the arc of emotion. So the arc of a story, the anticipation, the build-up of things, the suspense, the catharsis. All these things are kind of non-negotiable in an actual story. The beginning, the middle, and an end. It can list them out, yeah, but there's no emotion. It's almost like a transactional story. And often it's just too vague, and I'm going back to the original things of your story, your individual memories, or the individual things that we experience. as a society, as people, anecdotes, the cultural references that we can all have. It doesn't have that because it doesn't have those triggers, at least not yet anyway. It might do in the future, but I'm talking about how things are today. So again, we're coming back to the big information soup. This is just what happens when you draw on stuff that is bland and generic. It also has no sense of time. I've a number of times I've said do something next week and it has no idea what I'm talking about. Unless you say today we are Tuesday and I want to do something by Saturday, it can't position itself in time. It doesn't have context, insight, unless you feed it to it. Obviously, you can tell it to act as an expert in something, as a particular person or a combination of people. Now, I do it all the time, but it still takes from the middle of the road of those people context. It can't dig into those people's feelings, those people's emotions, why they come up with the solutions they came up. It can only draw from the publicly available information. It can't get into people's heads. Luckily, it's not brilliant at checking errors either. You know, we've all done the hallucination, and it's getting better. Even if you tell it to check its errors, even if you tell it to produce its sources, even if you tell it not to hallucinate, you've really got to be careful, particularly when you're doing more technical stuff, but even when you're telling big, more generic stories. And lastly, it can't take risks or innovate, and that's simply because that's not what it's designed to do. Most AI, well, all AI programs are designed to imitate, and often they're very good at that. They can act as someone. They can put themselves in the mindset of someone to a certain extent, and that's the kind of thing that AI tools are really good at. And you can use that to great effect. I mean, I use it all the time to great effect. But when it comes down to doing your personal stuff, the real emotional storytelling, when it comes down to you being who you want to be, being who you are, well, that's down to you. You're the only person that can do that. And I'm going to sound like a broken record now, if you've ever seen any of my other videos, because your story is the only thing that makes you unique. It's the only thing that tells you apart from other people. You know, how do you tell the difference between two accountants? They have exactly the same product. A balance sheet is a balance sheet. Why do you go to one rather than the other? Well, because you like them, you know. So I'm Mike. I'm on a journey, if you like, in the second half of my 60s to tell my story, to tell the stories of business owners like me and not like me as well, and bring out those things that make them unique. I'm a great believer in modern technology, but I'm also a great believer in being human. So if you'd like to come on with this journey, well, do all the the YouTube stuff, you like and subscribe, and all that. If you want to start telling your journey, I've got a free download in the description, how to tell your story when you've got no idea where to start. And if you'd like us to work together a little bit for an hour, just have a look at the story framework. I'll see you next time.